Real Talk with Jodi and Michal. Real friends, real situations, real life. Authentic chats from the heart to the gut. Two best friends keeping it raw, real, and relatable.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Real Talk with Jodi and Michal, where we have real conversations from the heart to the gut. I'm Jodi. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm a relationship and empowerment coach for women who are ready to break free from toxic relationships. My lifelong friend over here, Michal, is a registered nutrition consultant. Hi, Michal.
Hi, Jody. It's so good to chat with you again. I so look forward to our weekly chats, and we always have so many topics that we want to discuss. And I think through this time as in our podcast, we've realized that although what we do might sound really different, right? You help people and I help people, but in totally you help people
Mhm.
emotionally, and I tend to help people a little more physically, like reclaim and restore their health or optimize their longevity, those kinds of things. But we have a lot more in common with what we do than we think.
Yeah,
And
that mind body connection makes things really be in common.
yeah,
We have so much that overlaps, even though the actual work we do is different. So
ab
much overlaps.
absolutely. And I think today's subject that we wanted to talk about is particularly interesting because I see it a lot in my world and you see it a lot in your world, and we both see it a lot in the world in
Hmm.
a different way. And it might be a little controversial to some people, and we really look forward to hearing everybody's comments about it and questions about our perspectives. And I know mine has changed since I was younger, now to where I'm a little bit older. And I know yours has too. You've told me that. So what we were speaking about is the feminism movement or the women's empowerment movement,
Hmm.
and how that has evolved, especially over the last couple of decades, for good and for bad.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm going to start with maybe asking you what your experience was growing up with, because we grew up in a time post the 1960s, but when women's empowerment had just really come into being, where women were much more independent. So, what tell me a little bit about your experience growing
Hmm.
up and being a young adult.
Yeah, so and what I do find also is that what we experience in South Africa, in the US socially, usually something like 50 years, 40, 50 years ahead of the social changes. So, um, the way I grew up is with actually a traditional household. Very traditional. So my mom stayed at home. My mom took care of the home, the kids, the household. My mom cooked. My mom baked. So very much traditional roles. While my father was the breadwinner, my father was the protector, the provider, and very traditional roles. I was I was the first in my line that went to university, the first woman that went to university. So it was, I really do think I grew up at that change in society because while I value, and this we'll get more into this as well after we hear about your experience growing up, or what you want to share. While I do value traditional roles, and I actually wow, I'm trying to think how much to say at once, Michal. Okay, bear with me. Well,
Oh,
I do value traditional roles, and at the same time, I wanted to go to university, wanted a career, love my career, have always loved my career, loved working because I enjoy doing it. Um, and I have heartache from the part that I didn't stay home longer with my daughter, that I didn't have more of a traditional role. I do think I was torn. at the point that I had a child. Up until then, I wasn't. Up until then, I was so enjoying my career and uh, being earning. I'm questioning that if it was even the earning that I was enjoying. I think it was just my career. That's what I enjoyed about it. I think I still, in my mind, saw my husband at the time as the earner, regardless of who was earning more at the time. So for me, it was about my career and my self-fulfillment. Um, I became more um, feeling more strongly about the traditional roles when I had a child, because then I really wanted to be home with her more. But okay, I won't go into those details about why I made those decisions. But and I would say that for the longest time, when I was younger, I did feel like men and women were equal. And I did kind of talk like that. But I don't, I actually think it's the words I was using that wasn't necessarily the reflective of how I felt. When I was saying men and women were equal, I meant in terms of we are equally worthy, we are equally capable. It doesn't mean we are equally capable at the same things. I mean, I think maybe a good concrete example is physical um, abilities. Men are generally, obviously there's exceptions, but men are generally stronger, bigger boned. So men and women do have differences, but I also think that when I was saying men and women were equal, I meant equal in terms of self-worth, equal in terms of our worthiness. And now, as I've gotten older, I do more and more cherish the traditional roles. There is something seriously beautiful, and that polarity of masculine, feminine is so much more palpable when there are traditional roles. And okay, I'll talk, I like to kind of talk more from experience, is my second time around now, after having been divorced and in the relationship that I'm in now, I can be more my feminine, nurturing self because he is more masculine. And it feels good. I feel personally more fulfilled in that. I feel happier and more calm, more at ease, more just a general sense of peace with that polarity than I've experienced before, when men and women are kind of like equal in our duties, equal in our chores, equal in our earning expectations. Where's the difference then between a man and a woman? Like, how do you see that difference at that point? I think it messes up relationships. I have more to say about that, but I want to give you a chance if you have thoughts about this
Sure,
before.
and I do, but what I wanted to actually discuss with you today is the impact on relationships,
Mm-hmm.
because as much as we hate to admit it, throughout history, for good and for bad, I'm not saying that it was perfect and roses and wonderful. This was very abused, this power structure, but
Mm-hmm.
men were traditionally the hunters
Mm-hmm.
and women were traditionally the gatherers. Men are analytical, women tend to be more emotional. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
we are more nurturing, whereas men are more problem solving. Not always, right?
Yes,
I know
yes,
me
we're
specifically.
saying generally because
Yeah,
of course there's differences, individual differences,
of
but if
course. And
we
I'll
have
give
to generalize to make to have this conversation.
right. And I'll give an example, just a personal example. I if I had a preference or a path to study or lean towards, I am incredibly mathematical.
Mm-hmm.
Maths and science, they were
Yeah.
always my things. I loved history and learning and
Mm-hmm.
language. I enjoyed it. It wasn't that I didn't, but I was a very maths and science. And that had a lot, if we go back in my history, that had a lot to do with nurture more than nature, because my father was very, very traditional, not always in the best way, because his oldest child was meant to be a boy, and clearly I was not. But from an educational perspective, I was drilled on maths and science from a very, very young age. Now, I grew up in a somewhat traditional household, so not quite like yours, because my mum at 18 left her home and traveled overseas to Israel. She left her home in what is now Zimbabwe, traveled overseas to Israel to study pharmacy. Again, strange, scientific, which at the time was very much a male-dominated field. In Hebrew, so in a totally different language. So but by the time we were living in South Africa, she, for many, many reasons, she didn't work, or when she did work, it was very much part-time, and she was home when I was younger. She was home when we were home. So if she worked, it was while we were at school. And then she would come home when we were home. Now, I was always brought up with the assumption that it didn't even occur to me in my brain that not going to university was an option. It was more about what I was going to do in university. And remember, I was meant to be a boy. So I was told that I could become a doctor or a civil engineer or an orthodontist, because an orthodontist was a good profession for a girl and a doctor was just expected, and my father was a civil engineer. So
I didn't know that about you. I didn't know that piece. I don't remember it.
Those were the options. And it took a lot of convincing from them to allow me to study optometry, which was also a good profession for a woman. So I grew up in this very dichotomous situation of, well, you're just as good as all the boys because you're smart as all the boys, but clearly you're a woman and you need to do something. If you're not doing exactly what I'm doing, you need to do something that's appropriate for, or that's good for a woman, a good career for a woman.
Yeah.
Right. Which was, but I don't really believe that shaped much of my beliefs at the time, any more than the fact of not having an education, like not having this tertiary education was not an option for me. And I know it sounds like I come from a very privileged background. It wasn't that my parents said, here's money, go to university. They didn't, but it wasn't an option to not go to university. Anyway, as I grew older, again, like you, my perspective shifted. And especially when I started getting into relationships, with for me, it was with men, and noticing there were things that I expected from a man that weren't the same as what I was prepared to do in the like there were different expectations from how to show up in the relationship. Not that it was unequal or unworthy from both perspectives, but it was different. We had different roles.
Do you want to expand on that a bit, or
Really, really simple things like obviously there's a mutual respect, but there's something about the traditional roles of being treated like a woman. So being spoken to not like you speak to your buddies. You speak to me, with love and respect and kindness. Now that's important in a relationship. But I really saw that at the time as something in between a man and a woman. I like it still. I did then. I still do now. It is a big deal for me when the door is opened for me. I know there's some women that go, oh my God.
Tell me why, because I think the why behind, you don't know why?
I can tell you why is because no matter what I was programmed when I was little, science, math, very analytical. Women are emotional, men are more analytical, and men, they often, not always, but often they feel fulfilled as the almost protector role.
Mm-hmm.
And women feel fulfilled not as being protected. It's not that I'm weak or frail or that I need protection. It's just nice to know that somebody wants to have my back in
Yeah,
that way if something
exactly.
were to happen.
Yeah.
So, and I'm being very specific here because I don't expect every man to open the door for me. It's nice
Mhm.
when they do, but I don't. But I do expect it from my partner. And
Yeah.
and people laugh because my husband is the sweetest. And it's one of the things that for me melts my heart every time he runs like a school child to open every single door for me. And he gets mad when I don't. And
Oh,
it's not something I've ever asked for. It's something
yeah.
he's always done.
Yeah.
And when we went through a patch in our marriage where things were challenging for the best part, and everybody does, I knew things weren't good,
Uh-huh.
and he no longer did that.
Ah,
He
yeah,
had
yeah.
no, and it wasn't as an affront to me. It was he no longer felt the need in a way to have my back.
So you see that that's the difference where, when you hear women saying, or even to the point of, let's use the extreme, being offended when a man opens the door.
Ah,
Usually the reason is, I'm not weak. I can open a door myself. So the thing is, what you've just described there indicates that the want for a man to open a door, and then we can extrapolate that to other behaviors in a man, but this is a really good example, is not about because I can't. It's not about because I'm a woman and I'm weak and I'm not capable and I need a man. It's exactly you. I love the way you said it. It's about this sense of he's got my back. I mean, he literally has your back. When he's opening the door, he's literally standing behind you, even though, like you say, the reason is not to protect, but he's literally got your back. He's literally in that protective kind of stance. And there's something chivalrous about it. There's something respectful about it. I like it. And my partner does the same. Also, not because I've asked, but he every single time will
yeah,
open the door for me. And it makes me feel, I think another way I would describe it is soft, not weak. And men like it when men like the softness of women. I remember the first time I had a man say that to me. It wasn't someone I was dating or anything, but he mentioned something about women being soft, soft in the way they present themselves. Their skin is softer. And I'm like, wow, I hadn't thought of that before, but it really stuck with me. And there's something about just feeling more soft, more feminine when a man does something for you. Even like open the jar. That's another example. Like, yeah, why must I struggle if I can just say, honey, can you open this for me? Then he feels like he's done something amazing for me, and I feel appreciative. And there's something so valuable about that dynamic, turning to a partner, asking for something, doing something for your partner, and feeling appreciative. That whole interchange is very, what's the word? I lost the word as I was saying it. It's just very positive for relationship dynamics. It's
it
not
is.
about weakness. It's not
Yeah.
about not being equal.
Yeah, and I get that. And I think the same way that men might appreciate the softness in women, women appreciate the strength in men.
Mm-hmm.
More often than not, women who are heterosexual will be are more attracted initially from a physical perspective to a strong looking man. There's a reason that women have, curves. It softens. Men don't, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the chisel. I have to tell you one other thing that my husband does that I love. And I think your partner does the same thing, is he walks on the outside of me when we're walking.
Yes, yes, and
And
it's so
again, it's not
naturally.
because I'm weak. It really isn't, because in many aspects, like he'll laugh, I can do more push-ups than him sometimes, right? And and brain-wise, we're very, very different. He's not the same as me in any way. He's very mechanical. But anyway, that's a whole other conversation.
Mhm.
But it feels nice. It's like,
Yes, and you know what else? Why it feels nice? Because there's this sense of, even if we, even besides things we're saying that many people might disagree with about how it feels protective, and because I can see there might be difference of opinions in terms of, well, why do you need to be protected? But it's not like you said, a literal protection. But besides those reasons, the act of our partners doing things like opening the door, opening the jar, standing on the outside of the when we're walking outside of the street, it makes me feel thought of. It's even that you know he's thinking of you when he's doing something like that.
It's consideration, right? It's
Hmm.
I'm important. The same way that we would treat something else in our lives that's important. And I'm going to pivot just a little because I'm interested to hear how this affects relationships, especially in the beginning of relationships, because I think through our mid 20s to 30s, going into late 30s, things really shifted from a dating perspective, and it became more socially acceptable for women to do the pursuing.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't the case. Was generally that the men do the pursuing,
Yeah.
but if men and women are equal,
Yeah.
then a woman can ask a man out as well.
Yeah.
Not to say that it doesn't work or that
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't make a man feel good, because it does.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if in the big picture, it's a little bit emasculating, because it's almost shifting the gender
Yeah.
roles from hunter
Yeah.
to gatherer and gatherer to hunter. And
Yeah, yeah, that is one that actually switches it. No, I hear what you're saying. That's not just saying equal. That's now saying the woman is the hunter, the one chasing.
yeah,
Uh, you know, um, a lot of men, and I guess I'm speaking about my second round in dating. So we're
right.
talking about,
But
in
that's when it's been relevant in our lives, because it wasn't like that when we were young.
right, right, yes. I
Asking
think
someone to
opportunity.
prom was a big deal, right? If you had to ask, well, if you had to ask a boy to go to your prom with you, that was
Yeah,
huge.
yeah. And
Now,
where men, I still hear men today, in midlife men, some there's enough, I've heard enough men that it's a common thing that they like being asked out. They like being
hmm,
pursued. They feel that they say it, they like that. I've heard them say they like getting compliments. Why should only women get compliments? And we feel good too. We also want to be pursued. Yeah, go ahead.
no, 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 no.
I was going to say, to your point about what it shifts in the dynamics, I think it shifts the dynamics. So I think it comes down to, yeah, so I think it shifts the dynamics. Whether that's a problem for a person or not, it has to do with your own beliefs about masculinity, femininity, what your needs are in a relationship. So in this sense, I'm not saying whether it's good or bad, but I do think it shifts the dynamics. I prefer masculine, feminine polarity. So I do have a bias that way. It does shift the dynamic if a woman is chasing a man. So it gets very subtle at this point. This is a lot of what I work with, because it gets with the women I work with, both in therapy and coaching. It gets very subtle and nuanced at this point, because now, and this is why I know you sometimes notice how I get very, like, semantics is important to me, because now I would say, well, what does chasing really mean? Because as much as I believe in the value of the polarity of masculine, feminine, I'm not going to say never. I'm not going to say a woman must never ask a guy out, because it's going to depend on the situation. I wouldn't want a woman to be in a situation where you've been chatting with a guy, you like a guy, you know he likes you, and you're just refusing to go and say something, and losing that chance to move a relationship forward. So it really depends. But chasing or asking a guy out can look different than a man does it. If a man is direct, which I love, just directly saying, hey, I'm interested in getting to know you more. Can we go out on Saturday night? That is so specific. That is there's the assertiveness and the confidence, the directness, and the sureness with which he says that is very desirable to women who like that polarity. A woman doesn't have to say it quite like that. A woman can hint. Okay, a woman can show up at a place where they know a guy's going to be that they're interested in, do something or say something to make sure that he noticed she's there and wait for him to approach her. That I will call that chasing in a feminine way. I'm not even going to call it chasing, but it's a way of still making yourself known without having what would be considered a masculine way of chasing and asking a man out. It's nuanced.
Understood, but at the same time, it's really easy to tell somebody that I would love to spend more time with you. Finish.
And
And that's
and
putting
you're saying
yourself
that's
out
still a
there.
very feminine way of saying, I love to spend more time with you. That is very still soft and feminine compared to a man's or a masculine way of saying, I really want to take you out. I would really like to see more of you. Are you available on Saturday night? That's more direct. That's more the masculine way. You said it slightly different than
Yeah.
a man can say it.
But I want to I want to go back to something that you said about how some men like it. And there are, I mean, I compliment my husband. I don't expect
Mhm.
to ever get I compliment him
Mhm.
every single day. I've actually, I make a
Mhm.
point of saying thank you and saying nice things and making him feel appreciated and
Mhm.
loved and wanted and sexy and all of the things that I want to feel,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I think for decades now, decades, men have been told that to start, that men and women are equal. And now, unfortunately, it's at a point where men are basically told that they're unnecessary. And women can have babies without men. Women don't need to have babies. That's a whole other
Mhm.
level and a whole other
Yes.
layer to all of this, right? I mean, we know that as controversial as this sounds, one of the most discriminated against class of people is white men, is
Hmm.
young white men. And so it's going to feel good within all of with decades and decades of being told that you're exactly the same. Like, why should you be putting yourself out there like this to somebody who's equal to you? And
Hmm.
then even more in the last decade or so, being told not only is it the same, but that you're less than, or that you should give up stuff so that others can have. Of course, it's going to feel good when you are pursued. It makes you feel wanted. It makes you feel needed,
Hmm.
all of the things I think that are really important to us as humans being social creatures.
Hmm.
I mean, again, a very big issue going on right now is young white, what they call celibate men, incels, right? They are celibate because women aren't pursuing they don't feel comfortable pursuing women, and women aren't pursuing men the same way because of this narrative. The feminism movement has been, I'm going to say, taken over
Hmm.
in such a way that it's not about traditional roles or not traditional roles. It's not even about sharing responsibility anymore. It's not about equal and equal. It's not about equal but different. It's you don't need a man. And your career is more important than children. There's a big narrative on traditional roles being frowned upon. How can you be fulfilled as a woman if all you want to do is stay home with your kids? Where it is the most fulfilling work from an instinctive perspective,
Yeah.
right? Man would never know what it's like to bear a child. Now, I've never had it, I've never given birth to a child. And it's a regret for me. It's a sadness for me. Yes, there will be women who don't want kids.
Hmm.
I'm not saying that that's bad or that's an insufficiency in the woman, but innately, that's what we are. And we've been again told over and over again now Your career is more important. Not having a career makes you less than as a human and as a woman. And staying home and having kids is silly. Having kids later is okay because get your career first. And from a health perspective and a wellness perspective of both mother and child, we know that that's not ideal and not optimal for both.
I was a little bit a part of that as well. I got my career off the ground before having a child,
I
and
don't think
yeah.
there's anything wrong with getting your career off the ground before having a child, but getting your career off the ground for 20 years and thinking about having a child in your late 30s and early 40s
Mhm.
is a lot more of what's promoted. Not to have a child in your mid 20s,
Mhm.
early 30s. It's going later and later than that right now, to the detriment, to the physiological detriment of both mother and child. So interesting how this psychology, how the mindset has impacted us societally. There are more women now in university than there are men,
Mhm.
which is
Yeah.
interesting, right?
Yeah.
Where women traditionally gravitated traditionally and not always, like science, gravitated towards the helping professions,
Uh-huh.
and men
Teaching.
gravitated towards the analytical professions,
Hmm.
not absolutes, but gravitated that way. Now all of the analytical professions have, bless you,
Thank you.
have female quotas in them. So men are discriminated against just from that perspective. So the part about helping women
Yeah.
in the end is disadvantaging men in the process, which I don't believe means equal. It no
Hmm.
it no longer means equal. It no longer means merit. It no longer means taking advantage of what you inherently are as a female, which is also now in question, but that's another conversation, as a female homo sapien, right? I mean homo sapien sapien. So it's an interesting shift. And I even see it in my world, where now there's a bit of a backswing to that, but where nutrition was considered the same, whether you were a woman or whether you were a man. And how could it be the same?
Yeah.
How could it? It's
Yeah.
we have different working parts. We have different hormones. We have stuff that goes on in our bodies that men could never even dream of, no matter what society tells you, right? Females, XY, menstruate. They have ovaries, they menstruate. They have this fluctuation in hormones, at least until perimenopause and menopause. Watch our podcast with Susie for more on that. But
Yes.
we have that. Men don't.
Yeah.
And in from the health perspective, it was treated very much the same. Medications were treated the same. And because everybody's equal.
Hmm. Yeah. Studies on medication done only on men and then
On men
transferred
and
to
then
women.
extrapolated to
Mhm.
women.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Behavioral studies as well, done on men and extrapolated to women.
Yeah.
And it's just, the results are interesting, and not to say that there aren't some brilliant results, but they're not always helpful.
Hmm. And an area that I see where this has been damaging to marriages is, and there might be more factors at play here, but since we're talking about masculine, feminine, I will say I can think of some other factors that might have been that
Of
could
course.
kind of complicate it or make it more complex. But the concept of, as time has gone by and now women are considered equal breadwinners, women are encouraged to, like you say, lesser importance on staying home, look down upon to stay home with your children. When I'm just going to make an aside here, what an important job it is to take care of your children
And
and grow them into emotionally
well,
is important.
I'm going to add, I'm tangenting to that.
Yeah.
The outsourcing of raising our children has created some problems in the younger generations now. We see it. We don't like to talk about it, but we definitely see it, right? In education, in emotional stability, in all of the things that you need to be responsible. It's your child. And outsource the same way when we outsource our health or we outsource our nutrition,
Mm.
right? When we've outsourced our child rearing, it's a problem for your relationship with your child. It's a problem for your child's relationship with themselves and with each other. But anyway,
I want to I want to say something about that because there are going to be women hearing this, and I don't want and I want to acknowledge that women hearing this could feel awful at the concept that it has been
okay.
shown that
Yeah,
there are some detriments to, as you call, outsourcing. And I say it in terms of I can feel it myself. As you were saying that, I could in myself feel the pain
right,
of that I wasn't fully available to raise my daughter. It is very painful,
right,
and I want to just say to anyone listening to this is it just is what it is. You did the best you
right.
can,
It- and
and you're not for a moment saying anything bad
right.
about
And
women.
I need to add to that because what's gone on societally, governmentally, through this, for lack of a better term, indoctrination process, is that financially it's no longer, for the most part, viable to have a one income family.
Right.
No longer
That's what
viable. So I'm not saying
yeah.
that it's the woman's fault
Hmm.
any way whatsoever at
Hmm.
all. I'm
Hmm.
saying that as a general philosophical outlook, what we have done as a society is not always for the benefit of our society.
Yes.
And I'm
And
saying that in every perspective, when it comes to child rearing, when it
mhm,
comes to your health, right? Since we've implemented, and just side note, since we've implemented dietary guidelines, we have become fatter and sicker and worse off in the health perspective than ever in history,
ironic.
ever, right?
Mhm.
So there's things that we've done. So I'm not, I do need to say that, and I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to shame. I'm saying that, yeah, it is what it is, and often you all you're left with is doing the best you can with what you have.
And I know you're not trying to shame, but I was aware inside of me what I was
Yeah,
feeling. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that because it's
thank
a
you.
tough one, it's a hard one, and I
It's
know some women
big one.
listening could feel it. I mean, you kind of made the a part of the point that I was going to make in terms of what I've seen in relationships. And when I was talking about there's other complicating factors, one of them that I was thinking of that I wasn't going to go down that rabbit
Yeah,
hole was also the need for two-income households. So as a result of men and women now being equal, therefore women can also get a job, therefore women can also get a job equal to what a man is getting, and other complicating factors like cost of living and the need for a two-income household. Um, but we're talking about the part where we have now a man and a woman in a relationship now doing the same thing. So now both are out working, both working 40 plus hours a week. Child is in daycare or out, being
yeah,
going to some other way to be taken care of. So now, since both are working equal number of hours, possibly bringing the amount they're bringing in could be the same. Could one could be more than the other could be more than the one. It's just it doesn't make a difference. Now, household chores, how does that work? Maybe that's also split down, somehow down the middle. Often women say they do more than men as well. So now everyone is doing the same. Both parties, man and woman, are working, are both taking care of the children, are both doing household chores, are both. Where does the difference between the man and the woman come into play in this relationship now? And going to work, working is a masculine trait. Even feminine has, even women have masculine times, masculine behaviors. We have both in us. Man or woman, we have masculine and feminine traits and capabilities. But going to work brings out that masculine side. So then so then the damage that it does to the relationship is now the woman has become more masculine. And does that emasculate, demasculate? What's the word? The
Man.
man. What's
Yeah.
it? Emasculate. Does it emasculate the man? And then, so now the relationship is not, doesn't have the dynamics it used to have in the old days with traditional roles. And I think that in and of itself has damaged relationships, has led to divorces, has led to what you mentioned earlier. Women feeling like they don't need a man. What do you need a man for? You work, you earn money, you take care of a child, you take care of the household, you're very capable. Where do,
But
and so the thought about do I need a man and relationships break down. The softness of the woman we talked about falls breaks down.
and I think also I wanted to add to that is that women, many women, and many women that I speak to and I deal with, harbor a lot of resentment because
Yeah.
the expectation
Mm-hmm.
is to be like a man,
Mm-hmm.
but still complete all of your female tasks, like all of your female roles. So it's still, and it's not that it's overt, it's a little bit more covert, but the expectation, even
Mm-hmm.
societally, oh, a woman can have it all. She
Mm-hmm.
can have the kids and run the household and run a multi-billion-dollar company and do all the things. Sure, what's the price of that? What's the cost? And there's often a lot of resentment or anger or frustration when all of that doesn't fall into place perfectly, right?
Mm-hmm.
The internet and things that we see online and all these perfect lives doesn't help. And then there's the striving to look a certain way because you're not expected to look like a man, you're expected to look like a woman, right? And everything that goes into that. So you're told on the one hand that you're equal and the same,
Mm-hmm.
and on the other hand, in a way, that the expectations on you are even higher.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're looking at the man that you don't need, and it's like, right? Or you're looking at the child and you're saying, you know, what's the choice? And some way society tells you that the career is the choice,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? Like and there's a whole, I mean, there's a lot that's involved with that. There's the virtue signaling of left wing versus right wing and good. There's a lot to unpack there that I think is way deeper and
Mhm.
way too controversial for us here and way more than we even have time to
Yeah.
discuss. But there's a lot to be said. Then there's religion that's involved in that as well. But religion, as society, has been very complicit in in suppression of women. So, and this isn't about, I think, traditional roles. What I would like to emphasize, and I think you would too, is when we talk about traditional roles, we're not talking about the suppression of women. We're not talking about
No.
preventing women from achieving whatever they want, excuse me, whatever they want to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
It's about following those innate drives or those instincts that we have in ourselves as the XY version of Homo sapiens sapiens, as opposed to you're more than or you're less than. You're exactly the same. You're worth the same. Your opportunities are the same, right? I can vote, you can vote, my husband can vote, everyone can vote. I can, I don't need, I don't need permission to do anything. However, there's still things that I prefer to do or that I like to do, and that's okay. And that's okay too. The expectation isn't for me to, go work on an oil rig like my husband. There are women who do it,
Mm-hmm.
but that shouldn't be the expectation,
Mm-hmm.
right? I don't want to do that. Yuck. It's
There's
dirty.
so much in this, Michal. I mean, you just mentioned right there in a few seconds. You really just mentioned so many different factors that go into this. Um, so it's and this is a difficult topic because it's going to. I'm sure there are so many things we've said
Yes.
that maybe have gotten our listeners thinking, maybe have gotten people feeling something uncomfortable. Um, I'm sure people have different opinions on this, and I want to say that I may, I say how I feel about things, and you do with you, but we would love to hear what other people have to say because there has got to be so many different views on this topic, and so many, you could see you and I were going so many different tangents. We had to like reel ourselves in because there's so much we could say. This takes us in so many directions. So, anybody comments, welcome. I'd love to hear what you have to say about what we are talking about today, about masculine, feminine, about traditional roles, about equality between men and women, relationships. I would love to hear what everybody has to say about that.
That would be super interesting. And, we tend to live in our own little bubble, right? For the most part, we tend to be surrounded by people who have similar perspectives to us. And again, with social media and the way things are nowadays, we're not even encouraged to surround ourselves with people who have different perspectives to us. If somebody has a different perspective to you, cancel them, block them out. And this isn't about that. I want to hear the opposing view. I want my brain to be challenged to think about this because it's something I think about a lot.
Mhm.
And especially I have a young stepdaughter, well, youngish stepdaughter, and I see the impacts on her. It's something I think about, and it's how do you address it? How do other people see it, right? Is this how do we if it's the precipice of an existential crisis, how do we reel back from that? And just I think it's such an interesting conversation to have. So don't be shy. I want to hear it all.
Yes,
And
looking
I
forward
think
to it.
you do, and I think you do too.
I
So
do. I want to look for, I
yeah.
look forward to hearing or seeing what people comment below.
And remember to like the podcast and subscribe so that you can, number one, help us spread the word, and number two, get notifications when we have a new episode up. So until the next time, Jodi, as always, I've so many more thoughts in my head. I love our conversations because of that. And everybody else, I hope you're the same too.
Yeah, and I will see you next week in person.
Next time. Yes, 1 week to go. I'm so excited.
Yeah,
Maybe I think we should do a video together. So
I would
next
love
week we'll do a quick video together.
Can't
Wonderful.
wait. All right, bye.
Have a good one, everybody. Bye.